and welcome to Tax Matters. We're now in the month of May. Of course, you know that May is a very important month of the year, beginning with Workers' Day on May 1st, Children's Day on May 27th, and of course, the big one, the swearing in of President Muhammadu Buhari for a second term in office on May 29th.
Today on Tax Matters, we want to continue our discourse on the search for national development by unlocking the potentials of taxation. And yes, you guessed right. We are going to be looking at the issue from the prism of the 21st Annual Tax Conference. Yes, this is the second installment of our focus on the 21st Annual Tax Conference.
We begin by bringing to you what some of the delegates to the 21st Annual Tax Conference had to say regarding their impressions of the well-attended conference.
As we always like to refer to events of this type as intellectual feasts, they had quite a lot to chew on.
Mr. Kola Wole Pabarinde is the chairman 21st Annual Tax Conference Committee.
So what informed the choice of the theme of the 21st Annual Tax Conference?
Well, for us, taxation is becoming a serious issue as far as the world is concerned now. And that means any nation that really wants to be self-sustenance need to look into the area of taxation. Most of the resources, natural endowment we actually depend on, they are fading out. And most countries, for instance, in the case of Nigeria, the crude oil we actually depend on so far is becoming a world over resources now, in the sense that more other countries are even discovering oil. Secondly, the instability in the price all over the world. I mean, the crude oil is becoming not realistic again as an essential or reliable source of revenue. So having looked at all this, we believe that it's high time the attention of the leaders, particularly our government, is drawn to this germane, topic. And how do we develop our country? If what we have so far relied on is gradually becoming obsolete, it's no longer the reliable source again, then we need to look, we have to think outside the box. And essentially, we have to start talking about tax. There are potentials we have not really tapped into in this country. And so we want to draw the attention of our government to this. And that is the reason why we thought it wise that we have to start, unfolding the potentials that are embedded in taxation.
What do you think we can do to unlock the potentials of taxation?
Well, I think most of the ideas have been expounded at this conference, particularly from the areas of having an update to our tax laws that are dated. Most of the laws were made 20, 30 years ago. So first of all, we need to look at how to update those laws, make them more robust, and speak to the reality. Secondly, also is the collaboration of all government entities involved in this. I'm talking about the FRS, the customs, and then the National Assembly in particular, towards basically working with the government to ensure that those areas of the law that are dated are quickly revised to meet the realities of the current times. I think, again, we'll talk about the focus of the government. If you look at the national tax policy, it's been stated there that focus should shift a bit more from direct tax to indirect tax. And I think this is an area government should look at. While trying to up the rate of VAT, then they should look at also reducing the rate of income tax, direct income tax, both at the corporate level and personal level. Those are some of the things I think they should do.
What is your takeaway from this 21st Annual Tax Conference?
It's very interesting and very incisive.
How do we unlock the potentials of taxation for national development?
Well, for us to unlock it is a matter of being serious with tax itself, All over globally, if you look at growing economies or developed economies, the emphasis on tax is so much. And we are seriously under-taxed in the system. What I mean under-taxed is that a lot of things that people go away with in Nigeria. You see a lot of beautiful houses, mansions, shopping malls. You're surprised that one element of tax is not paid. So those are the kind of things that people need to sit down. Are you getting me? You know, you come to Abuja, you wonder the wealth of this nation, the kind of things you see. My own advice is that be more focused on tax. Tax is the one that regenerates economies.
Looking at generating revenue for the government, what other sources can government tap into to generate revenue in order to double the tax to GDP ratio of Nigeria?
I quite believe that there are still a lot of challenges with regards to the low tax compliance culture in this country. We need to educate Nigerians to get to know what these taxes are meant for, on one hand. And on the other hand, we need to create confidence in these same Nigerians to appreciate the fact that the little that they are contributing, these monies are being used judiciously. First, if that is done, it is already a major base. Because some people, we struggle with even people paying taxes. And the simple reason is just because they feel they are paying the taxes, they do not see the value of what they are doing. So in this case, the taxpayer has a responsibility, government has a responsibility. Once that is done, it is enough to extend and expand the tax base by itself, because the taxes are still in the hands of these two sets of people that I'm talking about. And if that is done, confidence will be created. Others will equally come and pay because they see what these monies are being used for.
In your own opinion, how can we unlock the potentials of taxation for national development?
Okay, so there are two issues to look at. First is national development and the context in which we're approaching that. And then, of course, the potential of taxation. Now, when you talk about development from an economic perspective, taxation plays a very important role because tax is about fiscal policy. And fiscal policy simply means how government raises money and spends it. So, of course, to promote economic development, then government needs to divert money into the right channels that would create an enabling environment for businesses to thrive, both at a domestic and international level. So, I think it's a very apt subject matter for discourse at this very point in time in our nation.
What has been your takeaway so far?
Oh, I'm taking away a lot of things from this place. In the first instance, I'm happy that government officials were represented here and they heard the truth from the practitioners. And I'm also happy about the response of the government officials that were here. Now, one of the things I'm taking away is that it has been made clear to government that our tax laws are outdated. They need to be reviewed, to be brought in line with current practices. Another thing that what everybody has agreed here is that technology is key. Good tax application system that works from end to end, from registration to collection to accounting. That is the secret to unlocking the potentials of taxation in Nigeria.
The theme of this conference is unlocking national development, unlocking the potential of taxation. How do you think we can actually do that for national development?
Okay, as I said, it's obvious that the multinationals are paying their taxes. But I think what we need to do more is to look into these informal sectors, as you call them, because we have many more people in there who are presently not paying taxes. So I don't know whether it's going to be possible for the government to not really increase taxes, especially VAT, but to get them to be more accountable on their VAT.
So speaking of the informal sector, how do you think we can get more of them? How do you think we can incorporate them into the tax base?
I think we need more sensitization. We should have adverts, we should have jingles. Remember, we had a time when in Nigeria you were queued up. So we can do something like that. Make people realize that paying taxes is going to help the nation.
They all seem so excited.
Everyone seems to have something good to say about the conference.
Oh yes, the crowd was unprecedented, the choice of paper presenters was superb, and general organization was top-notch.
But then the question will arise in the minds of our viewers. Why were those respondents so excited?
In part 1, last episode, we shared with you the presentation of Mr. Tony Elumelu on the main theme. Next in line was Dr. Biodun Adedipe, who looked at global tax transformation, implication for economic growth and development. Now, that's taking it beyond Nigeria.
The role that taxes play in economic development is quite complicated. A real issue for us here is impact. And the argument then is that if truly tax has a very big impact on development, why then do we observe that gap between growth in tax to GDP ratio and the pace of development in quite a number of countries around the world? In fact, the argument is made that if tax is that effective in driving development without consideration of issues like efficiency, equality, and so on and so forth, then it should be very easy for tax authorities to just manipulate tax policies in order to attract businesses to their own jurisdiction and, of course, foster growth.
Against this background, Dr. Adedipe went ahead to look at the structure of the Nigerian economy, especially with regards to the informal sector.
If you look at the World Bank Global Economic Prospect for this year, that's 2019, which was published in January, one of the key things I picked up from that publication when I got it in January was this, that there is a danger to emerging market and developing economies in large informal sectors. And this danger relates to the connect between the informal sector in terms of size and, of course, the tax revenue, which is that if countries, governments around the world can find ways of reducing the informal sector and make more corporate entities migrate to the formal sector, then there is the tendency to expand also the tax revenue. Let me now answer a question here. Why tax transformation? Why do nations need tax transformation? I was able to summarize so many reasons and factors around the world into 8. And a good number of them also apply to our country, Nigeria. The first is that globally, it's been observed that there is growing income inequality. And in fact, if you look at the data for the US, for example, the affluent in the US are getting ever richer, and the poor in the US are becoming miserably poorer. And in fact, the data show that in spite of tax cuts, the top 10% average 9 times the income of the bottom 10%, bottom 90% in the US. And it is even worse when you look at the top 10% and break them into 1% top and then the following 9%. So what then is the implication of that? That means tax cuts, especially, if not well managed, can also extenuate income inequality. Secondly, tax systems have become more complex, and yet they leave a lot of gaps that the unscrupulous with means to buy expertise can exploit. Now, what about the other reasons that I said I identified? There is need to reduce the tax risk. I call it tax risk. Risk there means revenue loss as a result of preponderant informal economic activities, especially in the emerging market and developing economies. Then there is the social compact. It had been mentioned in the previous session, as well as the president's address earlier in the day. Social compact that disconnects payer sentiment from tax utilization, in which case the taxpayer also wants to be able to identify with what the tax revenue collected is being used for. Now, the fifth issue here is what I describe as technology leverage. And that means you are looking at the role technology can play and also how you can integrate tax payment into business processes. And there's a lot we can learn from New Zealand in that regard.
London, New York or Lagos, business or holiday, home or office. You can now carry out your tax transactions from anywhere in the world. You can now file all your tax returns, pay online, get a receipt and even process your tax clearance certificate from anywhere in the world online and in real time. All you need to do is log on to www.firs.gov.ng and click on e-services and be introduced to the world of innovation, convenience and transparency from the FIRS. You can also pay stamp duty as you register a new company with the CAC or for other transactions that require stamp duty payment online. You can also file your withholding tax returns and determine the withholding tax deducted from you is in government coffers so that you can get your receipt within 45 days as long as the deduction has been remitted. Yes, all of this and more online at www.firs.gov.ng/e-services. FIRS, making tax administration as easy as ABC. Please note that all FIRS services are free of charge. This message is from the Federal Inland Revenue Service. It pays to pay your tax.
If there is no trickle-down, that is the major challenge with most tax systems around the world. In fact, that is the major argument also against tax breaks and tax cuts. Because oftentimes, in fact, it's the major crux of the argument today, the debate today in the US, that since the Trump administration came in and introduced some tax cuts, that the real benefits have not trickled down to the bottom of the pyramid. And that is where the real impact of development is felt. So it then means that ultimately, if we address all the inhibitions and what we call rigidities in the tax system and make it easy to understand, to file, to pay, to seek redress, the ultimate value to the society is when every citizen can point to what government is delivering. And that, of course, encourages compliance, even beyond those that were part of it at the beginning.
Dr. Adedikwe's paper was discussed by Mr. Edem Anda.
I want to think that the revised national tax policy, which has been approved, has captured some of the key things we need to be addressing if we really want to move from this talk to the action. You alluded to the reduction of corporate income tax rates. It would interest you also to know that the national tax policy has actually recommended that. But it's important because you don't want a situation where there is a revenue loss, that the tax authority maintains a balance. And that balance is key because when you look at what was said earlier in the day, when people don't see a need to comply, it takes us to the point, how do we widen the tax base? Because if we do not widen the tax base, then forget it. The revenue loss there will be pretty high. We will be focusing on the formal sector, neglecting the informal sector. And it would interest us to know also that the informal sector is over 60, close to 70%. And the point Tony made earlier in the day about small and medium businesses, they form the engine room of any developing economy. We need to look closely at that. I agree also that we need the intervention of automation, but automation should really flow from the fact that you have information. You wonder why, as we speak, we are a country of over 190 million, and those within the tax net are said to be 20 million. It's a big, big gap which needs to be filled. And the national identity scheme, which could help bring more people into the system so that when you automate, automatically you get them into it, because there's a lot that technology can play to improve tax compliance. I take some of the things that happen elsewhere. You walk into a shop and you pay for a TV or a radio. And within a week or two, you get a notice in the mail saying you need to pay your TV license or your radio license, because the information is there. And people responsible, the administrators are there to mine this information and use it for the purpose of bringing more people to the tax base and widening the tax net.
And this from the chairman of session.
There is no good tax system without proper taxpayers enumeration. Do we know how many taxpayers we have in the country? Because that is the starting point. We have the BVN, we have the team of the taxpayers. But are we reaching out to the taxpayers? If certain ways of reaching out to taxpayers are not possible, have we tried alternative means? I believe that by the time we try to synchronize the information we have in our database, there is no way we will not know the locations of the respective taxpayers in the country. The informal sector, yes, they sound like informal, but they still have associations, and they are so loyal to their associations. The tax office should leverage on this. We as tax practitioners, we should exhibit the qualities, the technical qualities in us to assist both the government as well as taxpayers to take Nigeria to the next level.
In 2018, a total of 5.320 trillion naira was collected as taxes by the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS. This is the highest ever collected as federal taxes in Nigeria. Taxes have become an important source of revenue, enabling the government to provide greater infrastructural developments in our country. Tax revenues enable government to provide more roads, more railways, more bridges, more housing, more schools, more students in schools, more hospitals, more security, and generate more power. Because Nigeria deserves more. Only your taxes can make all our dreams come true. This message is from the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS. It pays to pay your tax.
6 plenary papers, including the lead paper, were presented at the 21st Annual Tax Conference. There were also 3 panel sessions, as well as a breakout session at which 2 papers were presented. As is usual with conferences, and indeed the Annual Tax Conference, a communique was issued at the end of it all. Among other things, the conference delegates demanded that government should match its economic policies in generating revenue with tax reforms that encourage growth. They should action executive orders and sponsor legislative bills capable of promoting entrepreneurial development. Government should work with Business Enabling Environment Secretariat to simplify taxes on businesses in order to attract foreign direct investments. Government should facilitate the creation of the Office of Tax Simplification to continuously review and simplify the complex and ambiguous provisions in the various tax laws and to simplify tax forms. The National Assembly, on its own part, is urged to assist the executive arm to close loopholes in taxation of the digital economy through enactment of laws that capture this commercial sphere.
It is fitting to end it all with these comments from the Vice President and President and Chairman in Council of the CITN.
So we're here at the 21st Annual Tax Conference that has been organized by the CITN itself. What has been your takeaway so far?
We want the government to listen to us. We are doing advocacy for taxpayers. We are doing advocacy even for revenue officers, because the government needs to listen to them. The government needs to listen to us. The government needs to listen to the people. It is when they listen that they will understand where the shoe is pinching. Then they will know how to put the oil of Gilead there. Because what are the people saying? Let us see what the taxpayers' money is being used for. And that is the issue. And that is what we are saying. That it is bad that we read in the newspapers people looting money, people doing this. It is even worse that people are now being forced to pay taxes when they have not seen the effect
what it is being used for. It's supposed to be both ways. Government's rights, people's rights. The two of them should match, and then we move the country forward.
What is your takeaway from this conference?
We have organized so many tax conferences. This year own is unique. It's unique because this is my last term in the presidency. And we are talking about tax and development. And you can see what has happened. A lot of people in fact, the attendance here today is more than 2,000, which is a plus for us.
Thank you for watching. See you next week.
Bye for now.